Think back to the year 2006. Now imagine a 3D Pokemon world split between two screens, one of them being touchscreen, and a world where you can communicate with people from all around the world. From Japan, from America, from Korea, from England, from France, from the Czech Republic if you wanted to. And now imagine that each species of Pokemon had differences between them, differences between male and female, and a world where grass-type moves were both physical and special as they were before, and normal-type moves were physical as they were before and special. Hey guys, I'm Elegant and Shu, and welcome to another Pokevlog. So, of course, this week's Pokevlog is on the Sinnoh region. And it was a really good game. It was a really huge transition onto the DS from the Game Boy. And I think it was just a huge step, because I remember back when I originally looked at screenshots and things about the game. It was just, I couldn't understand that this was Pokemon. This was just incredible. 3D, two screens. It was just mind-blowing that it was actually on the DS now and had all this additional sort of graphics and things. I know the gameplay didn't seem to change too much from the Hoenn region. I mean, there was a new sort of idea about the game, but the gameplay in general didn't really change, but it was a huge step up. I mean, the Wi-Fi was incredible as well, that you can now connect to people around the world. I mean, it's so much easier and just so much more accessible. And you didn't really need real-life friends to actually complete the game, which kind of took a lot of the sort of cooperative fun out of it, but oh well. So something to note about the Sinnoh region was that in the Hoenn region there was a lot of criticism about all the water routes and having to run into all the wild Pokemon and stuff like that, because I think half the region or whatever was like just literally water routes that you have to surf on. After all that criticism, the Sinnoh region actually barely had any water routes, and all the water routes it did have were very short-lived. That's just something to take note. So the Sinnoh region is very much based on the gods' creation and corruption. Me mentioning the gods before, I said that there was a new god Pokemon. So yeah, Arceus was the new sort of god Pokemon, the creator. I did also mention that Lugia was, well, before the 4th generation, Lugia was the alleged god Pokemon. And I don't know if you guys ever heard this or anything, but I know in my school it was kind of a big speculation thing that Lugia was the god Pokemon. I think this came from the Pokemon 2000 movie, that Lugia kind of seemed like it was the god Pokemon. There was no other really way to put it into words of what it was sort of speculated as. It's seen as like the best, the most powerful, the god Pokemon basically. Although there was no true facts that this idea was based upon. So yeah, I don't know if you guys will have heard that or not. Comment down below if you have heard of it before. Although despite the Sinnoh region not having many water routes, it had plenty and plenty of cave systems and mazes and Zubats to make up for all the raging of running into our Pokemon in the water. And to be quite honest, I think I'd prefer to have Tentacruels than Zubats, because Zubats are just very annoying, and I do prefer the water routes from caves. I find like big long caves quite depressing, and I don't really like them in Pokemon, which is one of the reasons that the Sinnoh region is my least favourite region. So although I do like to criticise this region a lot, it has a lot of good things. I mean, I usually criticise it due to being my least favourite, of course, and a lot of the time I say it steals Hoenn's thunder, because Hoenn was very much underrated, and I feel like the Sinnoh region was overrated. But I'm not going to criticise it completely. Like I said, I'm not going to go into why it was so bad, but it was an amazing transition from the Game Boy Advance to the DS. I admit that was a brilliant transition, and it changed Pokemon forever, I suppose, because even the new Black and White 2 games have some resemblance to the 4th generation sort of style of gaming, with the sort of the big, I mean, they've always had, the Pokemon characters have always had big heads, but it's a kind of I don't know how to describe it, but it just made it 3D, it made it whole and modern. That's how I'm going to put it. It made it modern and up to date with new gaming, despite it not looking that realistic. It looked good, is what I was trying to say. I'm not saying the older games didn't look good, but it looked well animated. That's how I'm going to say it. So another good thing about it, which is probably isn't going to be any relevance to you, can't say that word, so I'm not going to say, but it actually came out the day after my birthday, which was a really good thing, which got me excited about it. I remember it being the first sort of Pokemon game that had a big change to it that I sort of noticed, because before the 4th generation, I mean, I followed all from the Pokemon from all the way back in Pokemon Yellow, but since I was so young when I got Pokemon Yellow and I was growing up with Hoenn, I was still learning about all the older Pokemon in the 2nd generation when I had Hoenn. So therefore all those Pokemon and all those regions sort of merged in together, because I was kind of learning it all about those Pokemon all at once, because I didn't actually learn everything just straight away, because I was young and I didn't have access to the internet and Bulbapedia, so I had to learn through my own play, and therefore it kind of all came together in the Hoenn region for me, Pokemon just generally, even though I've been playing it for so long. And then that was why it was a huge transition to go to the 4th generation for me, and I just thought I'd mention that. So in the anime particularly, it explored many new ideas for contests, and I do love contests, which is, I'm trying to find benefits of the good things of Sinnoh, because I really did love the fact that they explored contests, even though it was copied from the 3rd generation. There was so much new ideas, and it was a really good thing, although the game did lack a little bit in contests. I think they could have done more of that with the game, but not going to criticise it, like I keep saying. It was a really good transition. I suppose it would have been very difficult to implement more sort of difficult contest rules and ideas. So yeah, the game sort of had a more mature feel to it as well. What I mean by mature, it had less of a less colourful sort of childish feeling. I don't know how to put it, but it had a much more believable storyline, because previously we've had like sort of gangs trying to either cover the world in water or fill it with land, or you had a group that tried to capture Pokemon by force and then use those Pokemon to take over the world, although it would make more sense to use the original machinery they used to try and take over the world, because that was stronger and there was no point going to look at those Pokemon. So the logic wasn't very good in the previous games, but in this game there was someone trying to create a new universe, which to be honest doesn't make sense either, but it makes science fiction sense. You can imagine someone doing that in a science fiction movie or whatever, whereas covering the world in water is just a little bit weird. You have to be a little bit crazy to actually try to do that. Same with land and just stealing other people's Pokemon. I mean, they never accomplished anything because the ideas were so stupid. I think the Team Galactic actually got further with their ambitions than the previous sort of bad guys. It makes sense because they actually had logic behind their ideas. Well, when you take into consideration Pokemon, because Pokemon doesn't have particularly brilliant logic anyway. So another positive thing about Sinnoh was that it was very well thought out and laid out. For example, the region was split in half around Mount Coronet, and on the west and east side you had different kinds of Shellos. And a really cool thing that I want to mention is that the Mount Coronet, which was down the centre, in the middle of Mount Coronet, sort of the middle of the region, you had the Sphere Pillar where all the 3 legendaries of Mesprit, as often you see, sort of circled around. So in the Sphere Pillar itself, it had a sort of a triangle where each of the 3 Lake Guardians went. But when you look at the whole region as a big picture, you see the lakes are in the same formation around Sphere Pillar as the 3 Lake Guardians are in the Sphere Pillar, if you get what I'm trying to say. Basically, there's a triangle in the Sphere Pillar that matches the lake's shape around the Sphere Pillar in the map, I suppose. And it also had the 2... it had the 3 Lake Guardians, which sort of represented human emotions, and it had the 2 sort of I don't know what to call them, the ruler, the sort of the ruler legendaries, the rulers of time and space, and then it had just the creator of everything. It was sort of just well thought out, I think. The whole game had good concepts and it had background concepts, and I think the ideas and thoughts, maybe it was a bit too much because Mount Coronet did kind of overpower everything, but it was a good idea nonetheless, and it was meant to be where the Pokemon world actually started out, which was quite an interesting thing. And it didn't start out in Kanto, it started out in Sinnoh, so that's kind of strange. Yeah, I wanted to just mention this, that Arceus' voice did completely ruin it for me in the movie. I remember Arceus being such a big, brilliant, legendary thing. Even though I didn't really like Dialga or Palkia, I thought Arceus was just like this awesome thing. When you watch the movie, if you've seen the movie, Arceus' voice just... I don't even know how to pronounce it, it just ruins it. It does not sound good at all. Go search it on YouTube or something. Arceus in the Arceus movie, Arceus in the Jewel of Life. Or just Arceus' voice actor. It's dreadful. I'm sorry to you voice actor for voicing it, but it wasn't a good voice. It wasn't a good... I'm not saying your voice is bad, but it just did not suit a god. It didn't suit a god at all. So yeah. And another cool thing about the game though this time, because I've been talking about the anime quite a bit, is that on Route 213 on July the 11th, December 2nd or December 31st, a rain appears for some reason. There was kind of just a weird weather pattern they decided to implement in the game, which is, I don't know, it's a good idea that they implemented that in. It's just interesting that you get temperamental things. You also have temperamental Pokemon on sort of times of day as well in that game. And also, a big thing you might know of is that there is a sort of sparkling snowfall on January the 12th, which is the game designer Junichi Matsuda's birthday. So I think what happens is the snowfall in Snowpoint City is just sparkly. I don't know, it's a quite cool thing. I remember when it was announced, when Junichi announced that there was something going to be going on this Saturday, because it was on a Saturday when it first happened. People had no idea what was going to happen, because it was saying pick up your Diamond and Pearl games this Saturday and look for something strange or something. I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was quite a big thing that was actually not that big, but it was quite cool. A lot of people didn't know what it was. So, another thing is that in the Galactic Hideout in Eternia, Juniper has a level 20 gun tank, although it actually only evolves at level 34. Shameful hacking, I must say, although it's not as bad as Faulkner from Gen 2. I'm not going to go into any more of that, but and there was also, I think I almost forgot to mention in this video, I put this at the end because I forgot about it, I couldn't think of what to put, and then some realisation, I would probably had to re-record this whole thing if I'd missed this out. So this was the physical and special split. This was the biggest thing to me in this generation. It was a huge thing, because I know they tried to even out the power of all the Pokemon in this generation by making pre-evolutions and after, just post, I don't know what to call it, just evolutions, general evolutions and pre-evolutions. They tried to even everything out. One thing that changed the whole Pokemon game was the physical and special split, which was basically, prior to the 4th generation, each type was either physical or special. So for example, all electric type moves were special, and all normal type moves were physical. Even Hyper Beam was a physical attacking move. But the 4th generation actually changed it, so each of the different moves were either physical or special, not dependent on their type. So for example, Sceptile was a physical attacker in the 3rd generation, but all the grass type moves, all the stab type moves it could get were all special, so it didn't quite work out right. But once you got to the 4th generation, it could learn Leaf Blade, which made much more sense now, because attacking with a Leaf Blade is now a physical attacking move, which just makes a lot more sense, and it also helps balance out the Pokemon stats and the Pokemon attacks. So that really sums up the Sinnoh region. There's not much really to say about weird things about the game and sort of glitches, because it was quite late on in the Pokemon series, and therefore they kind of weaved out all the glitches and things. So let's move on to the question of the week. So this question of the week is another couple of Sporkle quizzes, and yeah, a couple of them. I have 2 this week, just because the Sporkle quizzes didn't really seem too extensive. They weren't that very long, so I decided to just get 2 and put them and put them together for this one question of the week. So you can do either or of them. There was kind of one that was a bit kind of tricky and kind of tried to catch you out, which was the shorter one, and there was a one much more straightforward, like what the gyms or the badges. So I didn't want to put a straightforward one in because I know you guys like fun, challenging things. I don't know, and I didn't want to just put a really weird, difficult one in. So I'm trying both. I got 10 out of 20 on the tricky one, which is half. I'm kind of proud of that because I'm not the biggest fanatic on the 4th generation. Plus all the tricky questions did catch me out. So there was 4 lakes that you had to put, which I was just like, what? I had 3 of the lakes, but you couldn't get any points for that because you needed to put all 4 in one of them. And you haven't got, tell me what you get for that one. It was a really weird one. And the less tricky one, I got 37 out of 60 on. It was kind of straightforward. That was only a bit more than half, and I got half in the other one. So I'm just not the best on the Sinnoh. So tell me what you get about that down below. And I'll say thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.